Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm David Campervan Man. In this video we're going to do a T6 oil change, a Volkswagen Transporter T6 oil change, and I'm going to show you how this is done. It's nice and straightforward. I've also done an oil change on another video for a Transporter T5.1, so check that out in my other videos too. It's not all that different, but I will show you the differences. We don't need many tools for this job. There's a 1/2 inch drive with an extension and a 30mm socket, which is in my tub over there, and a 19mm spanner for the sump plug. I have prepped this job already. I've already taken the engine sump tray off. They don't all have an engine sump tray, but for your information, there are 6 13mm headed bolts. Just zip them off to get access to the sump. Now, I always do an oil change with the engine warmed up because it makes the oil warmer and therefore less gloopy, so you get more of the old oil out. So without any further delay, let's get the oil out. One thing I do when I'm changing oils, and a lot of garages do this too, is if you get distracted, you have to put a little sign up. You don't have to, but I always do. This says no oil. Stick that in front of the binnacle and take the key out and put it somewhere else so that there's no temptation and no nastiness from anyone to seize your engine up. So that's a good process. I also use an oil collection tray, and now I always clean them, because if you get anything out of the oil, out of the engine, bits of metal and so on, you want to see it. So that's why one of the reasons I clean it after every use. Okay, I don't have a ramp to do my oil changes, so I'm doing it with a van on axle stands, and I've also got a piece of cardboard because quite often you get little splats of oil everywhere, and it just saves it going all over the road. Plus, it's not windy today. If it's windy, sometimes the oil gets blown about by the wind, so that's always a good thing to remember. So 19mm on the sump plug, and it should come off mostly with your fingers. Sometimes it gets a little bit tight. This one's fine. When you're undoing the sump plug, keep another finger on it and keep unscrewing it until the thread jumps, and then lift it out and let it drain. Now that's nice and hot, that oil. Of course you're going to be wearing gloves too. Now I will just let that drain and go and have my lunch. Okay, so that's been dripping for about half an hour. I'm going to put the sump plug back on. I have cleaned it, and you don't tend to need a new washer on these ones. They always seem to seal nicely, but always be careful that you can spin it on with your fingers, because if you cross thread one of these, A, well done for doing it, it's quite a difficult thing to do, but B, it's an absolute nightmare to fix it. So there we go, and you don't want to tighten it too tight, but you don't want it loose. So there we go, nice and clean, nice and tight. Next up, I said earlier on it was a 30mm socket for taking the oil filter housing off. It's not, it's a 32mm, and it's accessible. This is different from the T5.1. It's accessible from under the engine. So, and on the T5.1 you have to, and the T5, you have to go from the top. So it's slightly easier to see on this. There we go, well done David. Okay, it is a little bit messy this bit, so that's just why I'm moving the tray. And make sure you have a proper fitting socket, because you don't want to break the housing. And it shouldn't be too tight, but it's always a bit stiff to start with. And then, yeah, it will start to leak at one point, which is why you want gloves. There we go. Yuck. You know what I mean? And never do it clean. However, that's why we use a bit of cardboard and have plenty of paper roll. So we just let that drip, 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 drip. and I will show you the housing, and I'm going to clean that housing up before I put anything back on it, and I'm going to change the seal too. So the actual filter cartridge is in here. Just pull that out and just take a mental note. See, there's little clips that goes on that way so that you can see the clips from the bottom, and then the clips clip into the housing. So your new filter should look exactly the same. Always double check your new part looks the same size. There's my little clips at the top. I can't really see that through the bag. Don't really want to get dirty. Yeah, there's my clips. And there's always a new seal with the oil filter as well. So we'll change that too. Okay. Okay, so this is the oil filter housing, and I'm going to clean it, and I'm going to change the oil seal there. So just got a little precision screwdriver. Just zap that off. It goes into the big thick groove right near the top. So once that's off, get some fresh paper, and I've got brake cleaner here. Just make sure it's all clean, and you don't leave bits of paper in it. If you do, make sure they're all out. Right. Not an awful lot of garages are going to do this level of cleaning detail, but I just think I'd much rather it nice and clean. Good. Okay. Yeah, I don't think that's another oil seal in there. Okay, so let's put the new oil seal on. Just goes on right at the top. It's just a round oil seal, so a round bit of O-ring basically. And then all I'm going to do is get the fresh oil and just lube up that new seal. And that is your oil filter housing ready to go back on. The oil filter housing has the specified torque that you need to tighten it to. It's 25 Newton meters, I think it is. Yeah. Which is not that tight. So I know roughly how that feels though. Okay, before we put the oil filter housing and the filter back in, we're just gonna make sure everything's nice and clean. I've got brake cleaner here. Which is a good thing to use because it evaporates very quickly and gets everything nice and clean. You don't have to do this, but it's better to do it to keep everything nice and clean. If you want to do a dirty job, that's fine. No skin off my nose. Right, okay, oil filter housing. There is a spring there, which gives it a bit of resistance. And now just pop the housing back on. Right, remember this is 25 Newton meters, so it's really just as, that's it. All you need to do is just make sure when it offers some resistance you don't crush it on, because you don't want to have to go out and buy one of them. It's not really a nice thing to have to buy. So oil filter housing back on, sump plug back on. Always just double check you've done everything right, and then you can go and fill up the oil again. Okay, so we're at the top of the engine now to put in the oil, and this is where you put it. Don't put it in the dipstick hole. I've heard of that getting done before. It's not uncommon for these oil caps to have a little bit of mayonnaise on it. It's not necessarily a red flag. Just these engines can sometimes run quite hot. It depends on the running it's getting. This one's fine, but always just make sure it's nice and clean. Yeah, because you don't want little bits and pieces going into the oil. And I would always just give that a little clean up with my brake cleaner. There we go. And once it's all clean, let's pop it aside for now. And then I've got this nice little pourer. The oil we're using here is Quantum 5W30, which is fully synthetic, Obviously other brands are available, and this nice little pourer means I can get it in very close to the cap, and I'm going to fill nearly 8 litres of oil in this. I think it's 7.6 it should take. Oh, and by the way, make sure when you're checking the engine oil at the end that if the van is not level, you take that into account. The more level the van is, the more accurate your reading is going to be. And I always count in how much I'm putting in, so that's my first 2. Four. 6. About 7.5. Okay, after about 7.5 litres, I'm just going to put the cap on, then start the engine to slosh the new oil around, and then we'll check the level. And because we've got oil and a filter and the sump plug in, we can lose this sign and start the engine. Oil light's gone straight out, so that's good. Okay, last dip. I reckon this will be it. Bang on, oil's right at the top of the hatchings, which is ideal. Perfect. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that video, hope you found it useful. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see my other content coming up. And actually, if you're watching this video roughly when I'm posting it, I'm doing a full refurb on a van which is actually currently in the workshop just now. We've done 2 parts at this stage, and the next parts will be posted in due course. Thanks for watching.